good that you bring up the subject of contact. Let's see if we can shed some light on what happened to Paul Stubber before when he retired at the top of the mountain. Grant's with him in pit lane.
You've been up and seen the stewards. How did you see what transpired and who were the people that caught up in that incident?
I know I held the gentleman up, and that's just a passage of track that you can't really get out of everyone's way in a hurry, but I squeezed the brakes going into McPhilmy Park, stayed to the right as far as I could, and really the next thing I saw out of my peripheral vision on the left, and the impact I got from the left side just sent me careering off into the wall.
Well, Garth, as we watch this pit stop, how did you see that one unfold?
We could certainly see, or hear, there was contact between the two cars, and as Paul Stubber was saying, it's a tricky part of the road, whereas you really can't go too wide through there, and the faster cars, we spoke about it earlier, just got to be a little bit patient. The next corner after McPhilmy Park is a big long run to Skyline where there's plenty of opportunity to get past.
Oh, wow. Car 28, Class D, high performance, the GWS personnel entry. And we've got more issues for the Donut King Nissan. Peter Lemus, Tony Alford and Mal Rose, this trio. Transmission issues again, we're told. They do a great job with their endurance events overseas. They've taken V8 supercars to the Nürburgring and all sorts. So here's the 12-hour update for you at the end of hour 7. Classes first, Linton and his team continue to lead Class C, backed by Pedigree. Fuchs Class D is Conroy, Robson and Braham. And look at that, a change in Class E. So that battle between the BMW and the little Astra continues. At the top, Oyoung, Baseng and Mies are there from Quinn and Baird. Wall, Crick and Moore, despite that incident before, are still fourth outright. Just past the 1,000 kilometre mark in the Armour All Bathurst 12-hour. Class leaders in GT3 Class B. Falcon Property Group continuing to do a terrific job. Roger Largo, Matt Kingsley, David Russell in the 997 GT3 Cup entry. If you just tuned in, Garth Tander and Greg Rust with you. Here's the leaders in C Class. Beric Linton's crew in this BMW continuing just to circulate, be ultra consistent, and that's going to pay big dividends at the end of this race.
Certainly will, and one of the things about endurance racing is tends to be that German cars always end up at the front of the field at the end of the day, and that's because they go around lap after lap, hour after hour, and they're built for this type of racing, and this M3 as well as the Audis and the Porsches at the front, they just keep going.
Matthew McKeedon and John Modesta also sharing this car. And in behind them we can see the East's Caravan Park contender in Class D. They're chasing these guys though. Mark Brain, Peter Conroy and Anthony Robson. They were so relaxed at the conclusion of qualifying. Fastest production car, there was not much in it. 3 or 4 of them within tenths of seconds as the Audi tries to find a way past the entry of Shane Smollen. This has been a terrific battle in Class E as well. These guys have led for the better part of the day. Some youngsters, Chaz Mostert, Ash Walsh, and of course Ryan McLeod's younger brother doing a great job as well.
Yeah, both Walsh and Mostert here getting laps prior to coming back later in the year in the Fujitsu series and V8 supercars. So having never driven a tin top around Mount Panorama, the best way to go about getting laps is do a 12-hour race, and the most economical way to do it in the Holden Astra.
Jared McLeod at the wheel maybe of that car at the moment as we look at what's going on in Audi land. This battle continues and maybe just starting to get slightly different strategies creeping in. Not a massive amount of difference in it, but they are taking a slightly different approach as we look at the internationals. Mark Baseng trying to better the mark set by, now this is interesting here, Christopher Mies. Now this is a brake pad change, so some were saying they might be able to, in some cars, get the entire 12 hours without the need for new pads.
I would have thought they could go the full 12 hours without a pad change, but obviously the Audi team have decided that safety is the better part of valour and actually just throw a set in. Having not been at Bathurst before, they don't have any previous data about what sort of brake pad wear is like, so they'll pull that pad out and measure it and see where they're at.
Grant?
Now, I can tell you that the team were doing it pretty much as a precaution. The brake pads were just down under what half brake pad was left on the pad itself. Now, they tell me the second half of wear seems to go a lot quicker, and I've been able to dash out the back and grab one. You can get a close-up look of exactly how much wear is left on the pad. That one's well and truly about the 60% wear mark. It's got about 40% left there, they're telling me reliably. But now that they've got new pads in it, they are A-OK right to the end of this race, and it should be very, very strong.
He's got to be a little careful holding brake pads like that these days. He nearly burned himself there a year or two back. O'Donnell, Clennon and Kanupka in Class B, the 996 entry. And there's the David Reynolds, Dean Fiore, Mark Sinney car. Moving down the inside. Mark Sinney entry, of course, in the GT3 outright Class A. You can see the speed difference there between the GT3 Cup S. Already a good distance up the road.
Those guys fighting back from earlier contact with the Donut King GTR, and also a few brake issues. So 12-hour event, there's plenty of time to fight back, but it's hard when you're fighting outright with the Audi, factory Audi team and that VIP Porsche team.
Great work by Tressida, Smollen and Simon Middleton, the crew from Wall Racing, getting them back out there. VIP car starting to come under pressure once again from Mark Eddy, Warren Luff, and of course Craig Lowndes.
Also a bit of lap traffic there altering the gap. So that's one of the things is when you're racing these outright cars is you've obviously got to monitor your opposition speed, but you've also got to monitor where you are on the track relative to the slower cars and hope that they don't slow you down too much in key areas of the circuit.
Warren back into a full-time gig in the main game of V8 Supercar. He's with Grant in pit lane.
What are you watching on TV, mate? Isn't there anything better on?
Well, hopefully I'm watching Lowndesy take the lead back.
He's doing a good job, and he's managed to make up a mile of ground there too. You must be pretty confident. I know it's still a long way to go, but the car looks strong and the driver combination is fantastic.
Yeah, look, the car's very strong, but obviously there's still 4.5 hours to go, so we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. It's like, here goes Craig, up the outside. No, I don't think Quinny wants to let him pass. So, look, there's still 4.5 hours to go. There's still a lot of racing to happen, but we're very happy with the pace of the car. The team are doing a sensational job, and Craig's out there doing what he does best.
And he'd be feeling happy at the moment because the back of the Porsche is dancing around too, which is a good indication. And you've been in situations like this at Mount Panorama. What do drivers think about when they can see the car in front dancing over the track?
Well, when you can see the car in front moving around, you know that their tyres are starting to obviously get a little bit second-hand, and I can tell you now there's no one worse that you want to have behind you than Craig Lowndes. He's the king of being able to monster the back of a car and be within inches, but never actually touch. He's a definite gentleman racer, but I'll tell you what, he's not a good person to have behind. So I think Clark Quinn is going to have his mirrors full of Audi right now, and hopefully very shortly he'll be able to look at the back of our car.
The first race down under for Audi since the start of the new millennium. You may recall Dindo Capello and Alan McNish winning that race of 1,000 years in Adelaide at the end of the year 2000.
You see here now, the Lowndes Audi's dropped right off the back of the Quinn Porsche.
Dude, that was perfect. I do believe that Lowndes went into limp mode because he was tucked up behind you, getting hot air, and probably overheated his engine. Anything else you want me to do? No, you're doing a great job, mate. Really awesome. Yeah, just keep it up, dude. You've got about 10 laps or so to go.
So the motivation for Clark Quinn, and in the meantime, we're being made aware of the fact that a temperature issue may have crept in for Lowndes, so the crew just making him aware of it, telling him, hey, this has got to last to the end of the race, so just look after the car. Back to the Maximum Motorsports Subaru, heading up the mountain. Dean Herridge, former rally driver, still rally driving, in fact, in tarmac events these days. Contested Targa Rest Point in Tasmania, then came straight from Tassie to the mountain, while his dad and some of the Maximum crew did the long drive across the Nullarbor from their base in Western Australia, where they were subjected in that truck to about 50-degree heat, so they were pretty pleased to arrive here at Bathurst, only to find out, of course, it's been searing hot here as well for much of the week. It's been in and out of pit lane, this car, with some fuel issues. One of the things, some beautiful craftsmanship in this car, some things that Rob Herridge has actually built himself, but one of the things they've had to install, of course, is the dry brake refueling system, and that's had some teething issues. They haven't been able to resolve it quite yet.
We saw earlier in the race the Maximum Motorsport guys in the back of the Subaru looking at the fuel tank. Not a bad place to spend an afternoon watching cars go by, top of the mountain.
Exactly. At least they don't have the umbrellas up at the moment, although some suggestion that we may get a heavy downpour. And now even the latest update saying possibility of hail within the last half hour or so of race finish. So the mountain is throwing everything at these competitors, and it's happened in the production car class as well. What a shame. Doesn't sound good at all. Maybe a turbo problem, although the reverse lights came on in the car. Let's just listen here. Terminal.
No, it's broken down. I've lost my clutch.
It's a clutch issue.
I don't know if I'm on fire, mate. So what do you want me to do? Oh, I'm on fire.
And that's the race run, so he'll be out of there. He's pulled it off the race line. One of the 300 officials that are working so hard at this event will be able to hopefully extinguish that pretty quickly. The shame of it, I used that word before, Garth, is that these guys have been fighting with the BMW and fighting with the Conroy car. That flame is the fire's getting heavier.
It is, and yeah, now that's going to start to take hold, so that's a shame for these guys. And we could, unfortunately, when you're driving your car, we saw the flame from outside, but you don't know what's going on, and we actually caught a vision of the dash where the dash had gone out completely, so something quite terminal has taken place in that car, obviously.
And naturally, everyone's keeping an eye on what's happening in pit lane, so people taking the opportunity to pit. Replay, thanks to Armour All. And there's the shot of the rear view lights. At first we wondered if it was engine-based or something else, but as you heard the driver say, their transmission or clutch problem of some sort. So Armour All board will do the classes for you first. The Century Batteries Class B still Largo, Kingsley and Russell. They have been there in that 997 GT3 Cup car pretty much all day. Conroy, Robson and Brame, a little bit of breathing space, but the BMW will still chase very strong. Eddie, Lowndes and Luff are back on top of the order, and Baird keeping that Porsche right in the mix. Let's take this opportunity to go down to the car owner, Alan East.
A spectacular finish for the East Holiday Park Mitsubishi Lancer here at Bathurst this week, and not what Alan East, the team owner, was hoping for in his fourth appearance here. Al, that would have to be one of the more disappointing ways to end the Bathurst 12-hour.
Very disappointing, mainly for the effort the crew's put in. We've thrown everything at it. We had a strong car up until that point, and we could have run right to the flag if everything held up and probably won our class. So that's what we were aiming for. Unfortunately, it didn't happen this time. We will be back, so.
Al, the car was looking so strong all day. Can you tell us exactly what caused the fire?
We think the gearbox split and dropped the oil onto everything hot underneath, and that's where the fire started, and that was it, over. The gearbox jammed up, and yeah, so.
Not much a driver can do about it at that point.
All he could do is get out and bucket the car, so.
But the Lance is fixable and we'll be back?
It's fixable and we'll be back.
It's all just a little bit of charred remains on the bonnet, but we'll see you back soon. Thanks, Al.
Thank you.